What's going on, Leafs Nation? How's everybody doing? I don't know if for the people that live in Toronto, man. I hope you guys are doing okay in the cold and the snow. I know some parts of Toronto haven't been plowed yet, and some sidewalks haven't been plowed yet, and people are walking in the streets right now. Hey, all I can say is stay warm, stay safe. We're gonna get through this, but holy smokes, is it cold in Toronto? I don't think I remember the last time it was cold for this long a stretch. Every year we get a little bit of that polar vortex, but this year has been freezing. But that aside, there's some interesting stuff going on in Leafland right now, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I don't know what to make of it. Maybe you guys can help me figure this out. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But this month has been a weird month for the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's a couple of games there: Vegas, Arizona, and St. Louis. There's three games there. You can include the Colorado game. Let's make it four. Um, where the Leafs were a little bit shaky, defensively, and you know everybody started to freak out online. Obviously, oh, the Leafs are giving up leads again. Honestly, people, when it comes to sports, fans really don't know how to take what's happening on television and take what's going on, in terms of real world stuff and put it together. They just dissect everything. They cut everything off. It's three periods on the ice. I cut everything off, and oh, the Leafs scored three, and then they gave up a couple of goals, and then they lost the lead, and oh, Leafs, they're up 4-1. Same old story. And I think fans really need to zoom out a little bit and not just pay attention to what's going on in the three periods, um, that you're watching on TV. The Leafs have had a real weird schedule. They haven't played a lot of games. COVID injuries. They're rusty. Their timing, everything, you can tell by their defensive zone coverages. Sometimes you see flashes of what we saw up until now, with the Leafs being completely dominant, like they started off in that Colorado game, or they started off in the New York game. Either one of these games, what are you looking at? Leafs get up, to a great start, and you see that flash of brilliance, and then all of a sudden things start falling apart. And I think people need to take everything into view when assessing what's going on the ice. And I think, we're gonna see a little bit of shakiness, and especially in that New York Rangers game where Campbell was giving up some weak goals, and it was very uncharacteristic of him this season. And I just, sometimes you have to take in the whole picture and say, the Leafs are in a stretch. They're facing Colorado, they're facing Vegas, back to back nights, a trap game in Arizona, and then you got St. Louis, and you got the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders. Like, there are no, easy nights in the NHL. And with the Leafs being off, and the lines moving around, and Kasha not being in the lineup, and all these things moving around, I think sometimes you just have to, you see the brilliance on the ice. They go up by 3 goals, then they're up 4-1, and then they give up the lead. I think sometimes we need to take the full picture into account and just say, their timing is not there right now. And you can see that the timing isn't there because, Matthews doesn't, look right. He doesn't look like himself right now. And when his timing is off, and he's one of the elite scorers in the NHL, if his timing is screwed up, then the timing for the entire team is going to be screwed up a little bit. And until they get back into a routine where they're playing games, Last week they only played Wednesday and Saturday, and this week they are only playing Wednesday and Saturday. So there's a lot of time in between games, and I know you're skating around a lot and you're practicing a lot, but the Leafs are in no rhythm right now, so things are a little bit skewed. And the fact that they were able to get a point in Colorado and they won in the shootout in Vegas and they beat St. Louis 6-5, and like that shows a lot too. Let's not just look at the blown leads. I think we need to take the whole picture into view, and the whole picture is the Leafs played brilliant in some parts of those games, and then they played bad in some parts of those games, and you can see where the true talent of the team comes out, and then you see parts where they lose their defensive coverage, and you know uh, in Colorado they looked super slow, um, and that has a lot to do with the altitude and just how hard it is to breathe in Colorado. When I visited Colorado the one time I did in my entire life, it was different. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. Imagine trying to, be on the ice for 40 seconds and go all out and not being able to breathe properly. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I think the Leafs have played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They've played 8 games this month. 6 against Ottawa, 4 against Edmonton, 4 against Colorado, 4 against Vegas, 1 in Arizona, 6 against St. Louis, 3 against New York, and then 3 against the Islanders. That adds up to 10, 14, 18, 19, 13, 18, 19, 25, 28, 31 goals. 31 goals in 8 games. That's not a bad, their offense is not the problem. It's their defense and their goaltending that let them down. But ultimately, at this point in the season, we've seen, how should I say this? We've seen a couple of different versions of this team. They started off the season slow, then they got hot, and they've pretty much stayed hot. And, they've had injuries and COVID, and they've come back and they've been a little weird. Now, in this stretch, you had the first month of hockey where Matthews had 1 goal. Then Matthews got hot. And then Matthews, he has scored this month, but it's weird when you look at the overlap with Marner. So the Marner injury happens. So Matthews plays with Marner for the first month. He has 1 goal. He plays with Marner some more. He gets some goals. Marner gets hurt, and Matthews goes on a run. With Marner out, Matthews starts scoring pretty much every single game, playing with Bunting, Kasha, different guys. Now Marner's back. He's healthy. And not only has the power play stopped scoring, but Matthews has stopped scoring again. So Matthews has 1 goal with Marner in the first month of hockey. Leafs power play in the first month of hockey was not good. It got better. Marner got hurt. The power play started scoring with regularity, and so did Matthews. Then Marner comes back, and the power play is not scoring regular, and neither is Matthews. There is a correlation between Marner and Matthews and the power play and the team scoring. Now, like I said, the Leafs have scored over 30 goals in 8 games so far this month. I don't think offense is a problem. But Sheldon Keefe says we got to spread out the offense. And to me, this is very simply Sheldon Keefe doing what he has to do to keep Matthews at a 60 goal pace. And the Leafs are going to be successful in the regular season, especially down the stretch when the games are going to get super difficult. And Matthews playing with two guys like Kasha and Bunting, um, it's already showed to be effective. Why? Because it's two guys who are hungry, who are like a dog on a bone, and they're gonna go get the puck. And Matthews ends up playing the same way, and then gets in front of the net, starts tipping pucks in. He starts doing whatever he's got to do to score goals, and he's gonna start scoring regularly again. When Marner is on Matthews' line, there's a lot of skating around, there's a lot of circling, there's a lot of backhand passes, and Matthews falls into that trend, and then all of a sudden stops scoring. Now, I'm not saying that, Marner is a bad playmaker. He's a great playmaker. But here's the thing. If you put Marner on the top line, like you've done in the playoffs the last couple of years, it puts all the onus on Matthews. Literally, the line that's matched up with Matthews puts two guys on Matthews, and he's just dragging two guys around because Marner isn't scoring, and back when they had Hyman on that line, Hyman wasn't scoring. So it was literally just shut down Matthews, and that whole line is shut down. So they need guys who are go-getters on the Matthews line, who are going to go in there and start drilling people behind the net, separating guys from pucks and getting Matthews the puck any which way they have to get the puck. Bunting will do whatever he has to do in front of the net to make sure that either he gets his hand on a rebound or Matthews gets a puck. So Marner ends up on the second line with Tavares and Mikheyev. Now Mikheyev has been, scoring this month, which is great. And he's getting that touch back. And Tavares with Nylander all season, the 37 games that they've played together, they're both on a 35-game goal pace. I don't know how this is going to help Tavares. Hopefully, Mikheyev can be the guy who is defensively reliable. Tavares is defensively reliable. Mikheyev can start getting the puck. They can start cycling it down low, and hopefully that line can score with some regularity. And now we get, we are left with Nylander on the third line with Kerfoot, who becomes the playmaker now, and Kampf. And now the thing becomes, when there's an offensive zone start, and usually Kampf doesn't get the offensive zone starts, you're going to see that the center on that line being switched around. And when it's a defensive zone start, it's just going to be a defensive zone start. So Kerfoot has played well this season. Kerfoot has made a lot of great plays this season. He's been skating like crazy. He's moving his feet. He's getting into the right areas, and he's making he's producing offensively, which hopefully, William Nylander is a point-a-game guy. He's got 38 points in 38 games, and he's got like 15 or 16 goals. He's on pace for 35 goals, and he's a point a game. This is going to hurt him. He's not going to be able to produce. If that third line produces and Nylander stays on a point-a-game pace, then kudos to him, because he's getting the raw end of the deal right now. Because effectively, the Leafs need Matthews to score at a 60-goal pace, and he can't do that with Marner. Let's be honest. He can't do it with Marner on his line. It's unfortunate. When Marner was hurt and the Leafs put Kasha on the top power play unit, that top power play unit was scoring with regularity, and so was Matthews. And soon as Marner comes back, that top power play unit, it starts they start circling the zone and they're doing these weird passes and there's no shooting and there's no scoring. And, Marner needs to go play on the second unit with guys like Mikheyev and Ingval and Spezza, and he needs to add some offense on the second power play unit, but guys like Bunting and Kasha should be pushed onto the top power play unit. It only makes sense. I mean, we saw the sample size when Marner wasn't playing, and that top power play unit was getting it done. And then, you know, when Marner came back and he was put back on the top power play unit, it didn't score. But guess what? The second power play unit with Kasha makes passes to Mikheyev scores on the second power play unit. There's a reason why the second power play unit is scoring. They keep it simple. They move the puck. They put it in the net. And Kasha on the power play is pretty effective. And the fact that they took him off the top power play unit to put Marner there, and now they stopped producing, is, it's a situation. I don't know what the Leafs are going to end up doing with Marner long term. I mean, at $11 million, he's really, you know, he's really not holding up his end of the bargain. He should easily be, if he didn't get hurt with, or enter COVID protocol or anything like that, ideally he would be a point a game guy with 18 goals, like 15 to 18 goals. But Marner doesn't score goals like that, and that's the problem. When you're more of like a one dimensional playmaker, the Leafs need way more out of Marner than just skating around and making some fancy passes. Like, he's got to be way more involved. He's got to hit, he's got to forecheck, he's got to separate guys from pucks. He does a decent job on the penalty kill, but on 5-on-5, he's not producing anything for Matthews. I mean, he gets paid $11 million for the sole purpose of, you gotta create goals for Tavares and Matthews. You're the playmaker on this team. If you're not doing that, then you can't pay $11 million for penalty killing. Like, $11 million is a lot of money. And I get that he's a great playmaker, and I get that he's a great guy, and he's from Toronto and all these things. But an $11 million player scores with regularity, or is producing plays at a Patrick Kane level. All we heard about Matt Marner was that he was going to be the next Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane has 30 and 40 goal seasons, which Marner will never touch. And unfortunately, that's the thing. But Patrick Kane is an amazing playmaker, and he's got amazing hands. Marner isn't even close to Patrick Kane. But, he's getting paid more than Patrick Kane. And that's that's, unfortunately, it sucks to keep bringing up the price tag. But in a cap world, it matters when you're making $11 million and you're not producing, and you're producing like an $8 million playmaker. Like, would I rather have Claude Giroux? Yeah. If I'm looking at just a playmaker for my team, if I have Matthews and Tavares and Nylander, yeah. As a pure playmaker, I'm looking at Claude Giroux. Claude Giroux can also score 30 goals if he really wanted to. Would I rather have Nick Backstrom at a lower price tag? Yeah. Would I rather have Claude Giroux at a lower price tag? Yeah. Would I rather have Blake Wheeler at a lower price tag? Yeah. Would I rather have Johnny Gaudreau at a lower price tag? Yeah. If Mitch Marner is just going to be a guy who runs around, kills some penalties, and skates around the offensive zone, making blind backhand passes, and doesn't produce on the power play. He's got one power play goal in 2 NHL seasons. I mean, that's not acceptable. It doesn't matter who you are, that's not acceptable. As a $6 million player, it wouldn't be acceptable if Nylander did that. let alone an $11 million guy. So, this line juggling to me is the Leafs trying to figure out what they're going to do for the last half of the season to keep up with the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and what they're going to do going into the playoffs, because the coach knows Matthews with Marner in the playoffs does not work at all. But you know what does work? Nylander works. Nylander, like, people get hurt. Tavares got hurt. Guess what Nylander was doing in the playoffs? He was centering the top line. And, he had great chemistry centering the second. No, sorry about that. He was centering the second line, and he had great chemistry with Alex Kerfoot in the playoffs. So, if it becomes one of those things where every once in a while there's an offensive zone playoff, offensive zone face-off, and they don't want to put Kampf out there, and Nylander goes to play center, and then they start switching up the wingers. There's a lot of versatility there with Nylander, but he was producing in the playoffs, playing as a second line center, and it's just the Leafs need much more from Marner, to be honest with you. The Leafs need a lot more, and the coach switching up the lines like this, it says a lot. Because the Leafs have to figure this out before the trade deadline. And believe you me, they're going to figure it out before the trade deadline. If this season, if the Leafs fail in the first round and Mitch Marner does the same thing he's done for the last 2 years in the playoffs, you better believe when this core is broken up that it's not going to be Nylander at a 35-goal pace and a point-a-game guy is the guy that goes. And it's not going to be Tavares, and it's definitely not the captain. And it's definitely not going to be Matthews. So guess who's on the way out if this core gets broken up? It's not going to be Morgan Riley, who just got a 7-8 year extension or whatever it is. Unfortunately, Mitch Marner at his price tag, not only did he price himself out of this city with, the Leafs have 2 UFAs coming up that are huge, and their name is Austin Matthews and William Nylander in the same offseason. That's, Matthews is not really going to get that big of a raise. The cap hasn't gone up. And if he's going to be the guy who's going to be the face of the city, I don't see him signing for 11.634 again. I think it's going to be a lower rounder number. And I think he's going to make it easy for this team to re-sign Nylander. At $6.9 million. If I'm Nylander, I look across the dressing room at Marner at $11 million, and I say, I'm on the penalty kill this season. I'm on the power play this season. I'm on pace for 35 goals, point a game. I got better numbers than that guy. And it would be a real shame if the Leafs lost Nylander just because they overpaid Marner. And that's going to be a backbreaker for the Leafs. Now, from what I understand, the cap is supposed to go up that offseason by a considerable amount. And I hope that's enough to sign William Nylander. I don't know what Campbell's going to get. But what's happening right now with this spreading out of the offense, it's not spreading out of the offense. This is not, I want to see 3 guys on 3 different lines so I can see 3 different lines score. The 3 different lines are scoring. Engvall scored, Akasha has been injured, so he hasn't played, but Engvall's scoring. Brody is scoring. Riley is scoring. Mikheyev is scoring. Bunting is scoring. And then you have the usual characters. Marner got a shorthanded goal the other night, and Matthews um, scored some nice goals in Colorado and Edmonton. And, you know, the Leafs have depth scoring, and their scoring is pretty spread out. The fact that I think they've only lost like what, 9 or 10 games all season. Is that true? Is that true? Let me double check. Yeah. They've played 38 games and they've lost 10 games in regulation all season. That has to do with good goaltending, good defense, and a spread out offense. The Leafs are plus 30 in goal differential. Yeah. The Leafs goal differential is higher than Tampa Bay Lightning. And they have Vasilevsky in net. I mean, so at the end of the day, the Leafs have depth scoring, and their scoring is pretty spread out because Jason Spezza scores sometimes, Wayne Simmons scores sometimes. Nick Ritchie over the last 10 games has scored a couple of goals, even though he probably will not see, other than for an unforeseen injury, but I don't think we're going to see Nick Ritchie after the trade deadline. I think the Leafs are going to do what they have to do to move guys like Dermott and Hull, and I think they're going to add defensemen because that's where they're lacking. I don't think they're lacking when it comes to scoring or depth. They have a lot of fast guys. They have a lot of talented guys. Their defense needs to get better, and their goaltending, they have two solid options in net. So when it comes to the Leafs making moves, I think Justin Hull and Dermott are the guys who are not going to be on the playoff roster, or they probably won't be on the Leafs come the trade deadline. I think the Leafs are going to do what they got to do to move Ritchie, open up some cap space, and go and acquire some guys. I don't think they're going to be on anything sexy. I think like Mark Giordano is the perfect option to bring into Toronto. Not only is his cap number good, not only is he a Toronto boy, but he has a long-standing history with TJ Brody. And if you bring him to Toronto and Giordano plays with Brody as the second pairing on the Leafs, there's a lot of options there. You can go and acquire a guy like a Ben Sherratt, or somebody who is a second pairing defenseman, and have Morgan Riley elevate that guy because he's more of a stay-at-home defenseman, and Morgan Riley is the guy who jumps into the plays and makes the offense happen. You don't have to go and get a superstar to play with Morgan Riley. Morgan Riley is more than capable of, taking a guy like a Ron Hainsey, just a stay-at-home, there's a lot of options out there. Like, there are a lot of teams out there that are not very good, and they have decent options for you to go and acquire at a cheap price to play with Morgan Riley and have Giordano and Brody be your second pairing. And then your third pairing becomes Muzzin and Sandy. Liljegren becomes depth. Biega becomes depth. You don't have Dermott and Hull anymore. You don't need them. But, I think Mark Giordano is the perfect option. He's a UFA. He could I can see the fact at his age, I can see Mark Giordano coming here, liking how good the team is, seeing where he is in his career, in the twilight of his career towards retirement, still being a capable defenseman that can um, contribute at a high level and sign a decent contract to stay here and bolster the depth on the blue line. I think that's a serious option for Mark Giordano. I think the Leafs would be, it's a huge mistake not to look into that just because he's a Toronto boy. Um, and he's played with Brody before, and they already have a relationship and they have chemistry. Even if he doesn't play with Brody and you still keep Brody with Riley, Giordano gives you a lot of options. Um, in terms of being able to play with a Liljegren or a Sandine or something like that. Like, there's a lot of options there. Having Muzzin and Giordano as second and third pairing defensemen only makes the Leafs that much better. And it's really just an insurance policy because Muzzin has been injured the past two playoffs, and whether it's a concussion, leg, knee, whatever it is, he hasn't been healthy and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So unfortunately, you need that insurance policy. And if Muzzin gets hurt, Giordano steps in as the left-handed defenseman on the second pairing, and then you put him with Liljegren and Sandine, and you still have a decent option. When the Leafs lost Muzzin in the playoffs 2 years in a row, you saw what it did to the Leafs. It completely changed the team. So, but yeah, I don't buy into this spreading out of the offense. I think the Leafs are trying to get Matthews into a rhythm, and they're trying to keep him scoring at a 60 goal pace, or even a 55 goal pace. And I think to do that, you have to separate him from Marner. And unfortunately, and fortunately, he's had chemistry with Kasha and Bunting, and you just hope that guys like Kasha can stay healthy, because he plays kamikaze, and you respect the way he plays, but he's had injury issues over his career, and you hope he stays healthy and get that line into a groove in the second half of the season and going into the playoffs, and hopefully that third line takes off with Kerfoot and Nylander. It's going to be real interesting to see tonight. They are playing, I believe they're playing the Anaheim Ducks tonight. Yeah. By the way, tonight is going to be the Leafs' last home game without fans. So hopefully on the 31st, 50% capacity, 10,000 people in there, we can get the Leafs fans cheering for the Leafs again and amp up that home stadium, because the Leafs are having a good season. The fans need to be a part of it and enjoy it and cheer them on to victory. So let me know if you guys are going to be at that game on the 31st with 50% capacity. I'd love to see, I'd love to hear about the experience and how it is. I've been to 2 games myself this year with full capacity, and they were amazing. So let me know in the comments. Actually, just in general, I want to know what your comments are on the trade deadline, these new forward pairings, and what the Leafs should do, and then we can discuss it on the podcast. But what the Leafs should do on defense, because it doesn't look like Hall and Dermott are long-term options, because they've sat out most of the season, and Dermott has looked brutal against good teams like the New York Rangers, who just blitz him and he just starts coughing up the puck left and right. So you guys let me know what you guys think. I know there's a lot of options out there, but ideas are always good, and we could discuss them on the next podcast. Like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next week.